We'll get started. So you should have some stuff. Are we? Do we have the? Are the cards at the tables? No. Okay. All right. All right. Who does not have cards? All the front people. Okay. All right. So. Welcome. We're in part 2 of this how to discuss your faith in a way that works. And how many were here last time? Okay, cool. If your hand's not up, that means you weren't here last time, or you just are like, I don't raise my hand for things. Don't tell me what to do. I understand that. I get that sentiment. You know, people tell me to raise your hand if you're, and I'm like, raise your hand if you're a man. I am, but I'm not raising my hand. Like, I get that. I understand that. We're gonna do a kind of a quick review on last time and what we went over, and then we'll jump into part 2. So real quick, just as a way of reference, what we're going over is this book has really helped me a ton. It's called Tactics by a guy named Greg Koukl, and it's where, like, what we're doing tonight comes out of this. So if it's just a little bit of this, if you want like the full, like, all right, I like this stuff, I want to learn more, I want to think about this more, Tactics, you can come and look at this book. This is my copy, so you can't, let me see, is my name in it? My name is in this, so if you steal it, it's literally stamped Library of Brandon R. Blumberg. Do you know what the R stands for? Do you know my middle name? It's right. In case you know. So if you want to jump more into this, get the book, read through this. It would be well to read through it every couple years, just to kind of get yourself, like, remind yourself of some of the stuff. So it's really, really, really good. It's why we're going over it. So we should have notes. We just ran out of notes? How many of you have notes? Okay, you're our favorites. Only one table? How does only one table have notes? There's a stack of 200. They all have them? It might be Kirsten, it might be there's no paper in the printer and it stopped printing. I'm gonna guess that's the problem. Okay, yeah. All right, here's what, you don't have your notes, so it's not gonna be helpful because we're gonna do a review of the stuff that's on the notes. So if you were here last time, here's what we talked about. Let me just quiz you. Okay, the first tactic we talked about, you remember this? Is to gather information and you're supposed to do something. Do you remember what this is? What are you supposed to do when you're in a conversation and you're wanting to help guide the conversation? You want to help make it this like this isn't a fight, but rather we're on a journey together. What are you supposed to do? Ask questions. Good. So you're supposed to ask questions. Questions are your biggest friend. I know all of us like to talk and we like to tell, but you need to ask. Ask questions. And the first question you should ask nearly every single time is, what do you mean by that? You ask that somehow, and you don't have to use those words every single time, but that kind of phraseology. So the goal is not I'm gonna convert you right now. The goal, if you remember this, my goal, our goal, your goal should be to keep them up at night. Your goal is to keep them thinking and to go, that's interesting. I haven't thought about that before. I'm gonna have to think about that. Awesome. That is a win. The goal is to keep them up at night, to get them thinking. And so we use questions because they're a great way to start a conversation. They're interactive. When you ask a question, you're not preaching at someone. You're literally, I want to know what you think about this thing. I'm asking you a question. And when you start with, what do you mean by that? Or tell me, when you said this, what does that mean? Or help me understand what you mean by X, Y. When you do that, you're inviting them to engage in a conversation as opposed to, well, let me tell you why you're wrong and why I'm right. If I'm gonna guess, a lot of us have done that. You've had those conversations. You've had the, I'm right, they're wrong, I need to prove it to show them that I'm right and that they're wrong. And instead, if you start by saying, I'm just gonna start with a question. What do you mean by that? Listen, has anyone tried this? Have you guys been doing this? Anyone? Awesome, so this is effective. We are doing a great job. Listen, okay, here's your homework. This week, you have to try this. You have to ask some of these questions. You can do it tonight. Here's the thing. This is the power in questions. This is so crazy. Even when you know someone's doing it to you, you can't help but take the bait and jump into the conversation. When they ask you a question, it's like, ooh, you wanna know what I think? Ooh, I'll gladly tell you. So first Wednesday, we did session 1, and right afterwards, I'm talking with people in the hallway, and one lady, she's like, hey, that was really awesome. I was really enjoyed that. And what did I do? I said, thanks so much. No, I didn't. I said, what do you mean by awesome? All I said. And I'm like, ooh, let's see if she even knows what I'm doing. And she goes, well, I just mean that like it was really helpful in my thinking. I go, what? I just did it to you. And she goes, oh, how did you do that? Right? It's like a magic trick. Like, what do you mean by that? And I genuinely was like, hey, what do you mean by that? But it was sort of a, hey, what, like, will you even know what's going on when I'm using it on you right now? And the answer is no, you do not. When someone asks you a question, or what do you mean by that? Or when you said this, what does that mean? Oh man, I'm so glad you asked. I'm so glad you asked. I would love to tell you all my thoughts. And you invite them to tell you their thoughts. Awesome. Okay, the second question, you remember this. The second part is, we said, is to reverse the burden of proof. We said this, there's no more free rides, right? If someone makes a claim, they have to defend it. And so the second question then is, this little guy, he outwised all of you. Yes, he read his notes. The second question is, how did you come to that conclusion? And again, you don't say it in those exact words. Like, I'm curious, like, what have you read, or what have you seen, or what made you think that way, or how did you come to that decision, or I've never heard that take on it before. I'm curious, like, how you came to that understanding, whatever the thing is. And you say, all right, what do you mean by that? And they clarify, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious, how did you come to that conclusion? Or how did you come to believe that, or understand, or think that, or like, what is it that's influenced you to think that way? I'm curious how you came to that conclusion. And again, you're off, let them go. You're off to the races. And I'm telling you, you are, and it's not manipulation. You really are interested, and you're saying, I want to get in a conversation. This is not a fight. This is not I lecture my 2 points, you lecture your 2 points, and then I give a rebuttal, and then you give a rebuttal, and then we keep doing this until we're both upset, and then we agree not to talk about this ever again. And that's how it goes. And you're like, you know what, it's probably best, wife, that we don't talk about this. It's like, no, there's no reason to fight about this. If you have like these kinds of things, like this happens with family members. You probably have family members like in your like extended family, you know, cousins, uncles, whoever, and you're like, yeah, we just can't talk about certain things. And the reason you can't talk about certain things is because you know it becomes a fight, right? Just do this if you're like, yes. And it might not be you, it might be someone else. In your family, you're like, oh yeah, I can't take my husband to that. If I know that they're gonna be there, he can't be there. And it's like, oh man, right? Thanksgiving's coming up, you're already bracing yourself for the wonderful conversation around the turkey you're gonna have. Christmas is coming up and you're like, whoa. And it's because we don't have conversations, we try to lecture people. So instead we ask questions, and we genuinely want to know, and you know what we're doing? We're fact finding. We're finding out what they believe. And we said this, don't fall for the trap called the professor's ploy, in which someone places a belief on you and then makes you defend it. Your natural go-to is to defend why you believe that thing. Even if you don't even necessarily like it, you feel like you have to. You feel like you're fighting for God's honor. If you don't answer, if you don't jump, if you don't take the bait, then it'll be seen as you don't know, or you're weak, or you don't have an answer. And so we take the bait. So, just to give an example, let's think of an example real quick. Someone says, man, all you Christians are so judgmental. All you do is judge everyone who isn't like you.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Okay. Easy, okay? Don't use this on me. Now, our natural gut reaction is this. No, we're not. No, we're not. And then we have to defend it. Yes, you are. And then they'll throw out a thing that they saw once, or they heard a preacher say, or their aunt accused this person, or you guys do this. I remember I saw this, and this happened at a church, and so therefore all churches are like this. And our natural reaction is like to defend, well, here's why, No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the trap of going on the defense when they've made a claim that all Christians are judgmental. And we say, well, I could see how you get to, yeah, okay, well, let me try to defend. No, don't do that. Instead, you say, when you say judgmental, what do you mean by that? Give me an example of where you think all Christians judge other people. Oh, now it's a conversation, and I don't have to defend anything. I've instead said, you have to defend. You just made a claim that Christians are judgmental. Defend it. Prove it to me, right? Instead of giving them a free pass, prove it to me. Show me, tell me, give me an example of an area that Christians are judgmental. And they might have a good one. And you're like, hey, that's actually really good. And then the follow-up is this. Do you think any non-Christians are judgmental? Well, sure, okay, yeah, I think so. Do you think, are you ready for this? Are you sitting down? Do you think you at times can be judgmental? And they'll go, yeah, right? Who's gonna say no? Yeah? And then the response is, so here's where we're at, ready? We've agreed that everyone's judgmental. So as much as we say Christians are judgmental, what we've just done is leveled the playing field that, no, actually everyone's judgmental. And we've used questions. Instead of defending or coming out and lecturing and saying, well, this is no, you're wrong, this, you ask questions. All right, so what do you mean by that? And how did you come to that conclusion? How did you come to that? Prove it to me, right? Okay, here we go. You ready? You got your notes now? Okay, the third application of the question tactic is to use questions to make a point. Instead of going through your top 3 reasons, your top 6 reasons why you're right and they're wrong, you're gonna ask questions. And you're gonna let them answer as much as possible. Instead of you lecturing and it becomes, well, here's what I believe, here's what you believe, and whoever shouts the loudest wins. Instead, you use questions to make a point. So the third use is more active. It's helping you go on the offense in an inoffensive way. So you are now on the offense, but you're not offensive. So it's not like I'm gonna be rude, but I am gonna make you defend yourself. I am gonna ask questions and want you to respond, and doing so in such a way that I'm gonna make a point by asking questions, right? So the example we just used, I asked 2 or 3 questions about being judgmental, and by the end, the conclusion was clear. I didn't even have to say, well, everyone's judgmental, so are you. You're judgmental, you're judging me right now. How dare you? And you're like, that's well, we're fighting. Instead, we ask questions, and we're like, well, give me an example. Oh, they're judgmental. All right. Do you think non-Christians are judgmental in similar ways? Yeah, they can be. Do you think other religions are judgmental? Do you think non-religious people are judgmental? Yeah. Do you think you might be judgmental? I mean, I know I am. Yeah, okay. Without making a statement, our questions have just determined that everyone is judgmental. And it's something that they've answered. And so here's the deal. Once they answer it, they agree. So he talks about this. We want them to put as many cards on the table as possible, meaning they make as many truth claims that they believe as possible and say all right, now let's use the cards that you put down. Does that make sense? Instead of assuming or projecting, I want them to speak, and then we say, all right, based on what you said, what about this or what about that? So we use questions to to go on the offense. Okay. You can use questions to advance your own view. Your point is a target, and the questions are the arrows used to hit the target. So this takes practice, and this takes time, and this takes intentionally thinking through what is my goal here. So someone says Christians are judgmental. All right, okay. My goal is not to prove that Christians are not judgmental. I know they are. I don't want to prove something I know is not true. But my target is this. Everyone's judgmental. Christians are judgmental, and so are non-Christians, and so are Buddhists, and so are Mormons, and so are atheists, and you name it. And okay, so the target is to get to a point where we realize everyone's judgmental. All right, I'm going to use questions to get there instead of just saying everyone's judgmental. No, hold on. We could use questions. You see the difference, right? So the idea, the most powerful way you can use this is to enlist the help of the other person to make your point. So you determine the steps you need to take to make your point or arrive at your conclusion. Again, this takes time and maybe even preemptively, premeditatively thinking through certain issues. There's always certain hot button issues where if I get in this conversation, all right, here's some questions I can ask. Here's some directions I can take. We'll go through some examples here in just a little bit. But you want to determine the steps that you need to take. And then you ask questions, and you get your friend to put as many of those on the table so that you can use them. So I want them to give as many answers as possible. And then, based on what you said, all right, now we're going to use that. Instead of lecturing, all I'm doing is just saying, all right, here's what we agree. Here's what you've said. Here's what based on the things that you and I both agree on, here's the conclusion. And so instead of doing what we normally do, they make a statement and then we just go on the defensive and we assume their motive, we assume things that they believe. They make, I'll give you an example here in a second. They make a statement and throw it out, and then we instantly feel like, all right, I know everything about them. They clearly hate Christians, and they're probably this is probably an atheist. They probably hate cats and wish and think all of us are dumb. Now the cats thing, I don't know if it's true, but sometimes we do that. We're like, oh, I bet you're just a terrible person. Instead, you just, no, actually, all right, tell me about this. What do you think? Now, let me give you here. Let me finish this part, and then I'll give you some example. The reason we do this is because it's much harder for them to deny something they've already agreed to. It's true for you as well. Once you say something, make a point, agree to something, it is so much harder for you to deny it when you've already made the statement. You've already put the pieces on the table, so to speak. So, and then third, you use those pieces to make your point. You said this, you said this, you said this. All right, based on those things, here's the conclusion, all right? Okay. You can also use questions to exploit a weakness or flaw in the other person's view, all right? Now, here's the thing. There's no special formula here. There's no ask these 3 questions in this order. This is why it's okay, I gotta think through this. I wanna ask, is there a question I can ask instead of making a statement? So if you can ask a question instead of making a statement, your default is ask a question. Ask a question. It doesn't mean you never make a statement. Of course you do. But when you're in this conversation, especially in the beginning, you ask questions, you want them to talk, and then here's what you'll find. I find this almost all the time. Man, I've been doing all the talking. They'll say this. I'm curious. What do you think about XYZ? Awesome. They've just asked me about my position. I haven't had to lecture them. I haven't to tell them. And they go, man, I've been sharing what I think. I'm curious. What do you think? And now it doesn't matter what I share. It doesn't matter what it is. They don't have to agree with it. They can not like it, but they at least go, all right, you heard me out. Now it's my turn to hear you out. All right. So there's no special formula here. Yeah, you'll just simply do this by listening carefully. Listening carefully to what they said and then thinking through of a follow-up question. And this is why, like, the more you do this, the easier it gets. I do this now. I'm by no means great at this, but I naturally, in a conversation with someone, I'm going to ask 20 or 30 questions, and not like, "How you doing? What's your favorite weather?" Like, but I'm just gonna ask a bunch of, because I genuinely want to know, and also like I'm gonna use questions to make points. Okay, your own study on the issues. You read books. You grow in your understanding of theology issues, of apologetics, of current events, of world affairs, whatever it is. Like this is the hard work on our end, where we go, all right, I actually have to learn some stuff. I gotta actually read and learn some of the things that are gonna be brought up. Okay. The key to this step is to listen carefully about what they said and to pay close attention to their answer of, how did you come to that conclusion? How did you come to that conclusion? So you ask this, number two, I'm curious, like why you think that, or what made you land on that position, or that understand, whatever it is. And then you're listening carefully for whatever they say. Are there any weaknesses, blatant weaknesses in their view? You'll see this is true all the time, where people will make contradictory statements. They'll say one thing, one sentence, and then the next sentence they'll say something that's completely opposite. It'll be clear that they really haven't thought out their view. A lot of times you'll ask a question and then you'll just get like oh, I don't know, I guess I haven't really thought about it. Oh, okay. And all of a sudden, this really hard take on something softens, and they just kind of like, I guess it's just what I believe. Okay, that's fair. All right. And so you're looking for weaknesses. Do their conclusions follow from the evidence? A lot of times they'll say this and they'll say this, and then their conclusion, it doesn't relate at all. And you're going like, that doesn't make any sense. And you don't say that, right? You're not, but you just go, all right, well, hey, based on what you said, I don't know if that naturally follows. And so you're thinking through what they're saying, and how you can help, like, use it to guide the conversation. Can you question any underlying assumptions? This is a huge one. This is a monster one, and you can bring this out. Well, what I heard you say was this, but I think there might be an assumption under there that maybe we don't agree on, and that might be the point that we're having issues. It seems like, now tell me if I'm wrong. It seems like, and then you go into it, and by the way, a great preface is, tell me if I'm wrong. That just made it a question. I can make a statement. Hey, now help me out. Help me understand. Tell me if I got this correct. Now, whatever I say is a question. Help me if I got this correct. You said da 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 da. Is that correct? And now it's a question, right? Instead of just like, well, you said this, gotcha, gotcha. Don't do that. Instead, you ask a question. Is there a misstep? A non sequitur, a thing that doesn't follow, a fallacy, or a failing of some sort? Is there something that, like, this doesn't follow? A plus B equals C, but you have it equaling 7. And that doesn't follow. Okay. Here, we'll go through this whole section, then I'll share a story. I don't think the person's in the room. Even if they are, it'll be fun. And then you address any inconsistency you discover. How do you do this? With a question. You discover something, you realize, oh, that doesn't make sense. What you said, ooh, that doesn't follow, or that is based on an assumption that's faulty, or whatever. And you use a question, not a statement. Not a statement. Always a question. Begin by asking, can I clear this up? Can you clear this up for me? Or can you help me understand this? Help me understand. Hold on. You just said this. Tell me if I'm right. And then you offer your objection by gently challenging the belief or confronting the weakness in the argument or whatever it may be. Again, you're doing this going, help me understand this correctly. You said this, but this doesn't make sense to me. I wonder if I wonder if you're maybe haven't thought through this thing clearly, or I wonder if there's some conclusions that simply don't follow, right? You're not blatantly saying you're wrong and I'm right and I'm gonna win. That's not the goal. The goal here is relationship and having a conversation as opposed to lecturing someone. So this takes a lot of practice, and you'll make mistakes, but over time you'll be able to do this. You get insight, and you'll discover an ability to see flaws in the argument. But this takes work. It's easy to get stuck. But don't get discouraged. It's easy to get stuck when you're like having a conversation and you're like, I don't know what to do next. That's fine. That is fine. Okay, let me give you, you ready for a hot button take? Hot issue? We just had an election yesterday. Did you know that? Well, it's kind of a big deal. The two things you are supposed to talk about are religion and politics. We're talking religion. Let's do politics. All right, here we go. Okay, how you voted, I don't care. Did great. I hope you voted. Some of us voted Trump. Some of us voted for Harris, and some of us are happy. Some of us don't know what's going to happen next. And the good news is we're all followers of Jesus. We're all Christians. 1,000 years from now, we won't even remember who we voted for. It won't even be a thing. We won't be concerned about who we voted for. But here's the thing. You can vote any direction you want. You can, or you say like, I'm third party. Great. You can vote any way you want, and you're a part of New Hope. Wonderful. Now, here's what I know. The name Trump is divisive. You say Trump, and you can get a visceral reaction, right? Yeah. So I heard Trump. All right. So me saying Trump right now, people like he's going to be our next president. He was our president, and whether you like it or not, or whether you're like I voted for him, I'm excited, or like I can't believe this is the worst thing ever. Trump has a reaction. Okay. So I'm having a little while ago, I'm having lunch with a guy. A New Hope guy, and we're talking about all kinds of stuff, and he says, he goes, man, I can't understand how any Christian could ever vote for Trump. Now, what do you say? Hold on, yeah, what do you mean by Trump? No, okay, hold on, I used that wrong. I can't understand how any Christian could ever vote for Trump. And then he looked at me from my reaction, probably trying to be like, all right, who'd you vote for? like who are you gonna vote for? And I'm just like, okay, all right. I go, what? You can't think of any reasons. You don't think, right or wrong, or I know who you're not voting for. You can't think of any reason. Now, your natural gut reaction, let's just say maybe you are a Trump supporter and you're going to vote Trump. Your natural reaction is, I'll give you 10 reasons right now. I'll give you 10 reasons. I got 10. If you got enough time, I'll give you 20. And you're like, you can't think of any reasons. I'll give you more. One is easy. And then it becomes a fight over why you're voting Trump and why they're not and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, we're never having lunch again, right? And nor are we going to be welcome back at this restaurant. So what do you do, right? All right. So I do this. I ask questions. So one of my favorite questions, I didn't ask this question, but this is, later on I'm like, I should have used my favorite question is this, is always to ask them how they would answer their own question. So they ask a question, be like, okay, that's a bold take. I'm curious, what do you think someone else would say to that question? Not what do they think. What do you think a Trump supporter would say to that question? That I'm a Christian and I'm voting Trump. What do you think they would say? I don't know. No, I'm curious. Like, what do you think? And like, all of a sudden, it's like I got to do the hard work of thinking through my own statement. Again, no free passes here. You made a statement. No Christian should ever vote for Trump. I'm curious why you think. Okay, now I didn't ask that. But I did say, hey, I'm curious, what is it about Trump that you think a Christian shouldn't vote for him? Like, what is it? Instead of the defense of like, well, I'm not a Trump like defender. Like, you vote who you want. In 4 years, it's gonna be a new person. I'm not preaching Trump. We preach Jesus, not Trump, right? Now, that being said, I don't want this brother of ours, he's a brother in the faith, to come to church and to have disdain towards anyone who did vote for Trump. Like, that's a real thing. To like, I go to church and be like, all right, if I see a Trump hat, I can't go to this church. Like, whoa, hold on. That can't be what we're doing here. And so I said, so what is it about Trump that you think makes a Christian disqualified, or that they should never vote for him? You made the statement. It'd be easy to go on the defense, but instead, defend it. Defend what you just said, right? No free passes. Probably wasn't ready for that. And he goes through, he's just the biggest narcissist that I think I've ever seen. Okay? I can understand that. You might even be right, I don't know. Now, again, your natural gut reaction is to like, well, he's not a narcissist. You're a narcissist. It's like, well, hold on. That's not what we're doing, right? We ask questions. Okay. So again, you're like the gut reaction is to go on the like, well, what do you mean? How could you? No, don't do that. Okay. So this is what I asked. What is it about him that makes him a narcissist? Like, what is it? Give me an example. He goes through all this stuff, all these things. And I'm like, great. He's put all the stuff on the table that I'm like, all right, I'm listening to that. Okay, you think this. Instead of making assumptions, what is it specific? Like, tell me, what is it about him that makes him a narcissist? And he goes through all this stuff. And I'm like, I've got so much information now. I've got so much information about what you think, right? And you've freely given it to me just by asking questions. And then, because my goal here is I'm not trying to get you to vote Trump. I don't care. You vote who you want. My goal is that you can come to New Hope and worship next to someone who did vote for Trump. You should be able to do that. You should be able to do that. And you should be able to like come and be able to worship next to someone who voted for Harris or third party or whatever it is. You should be able to do that, right? We should love each other and be spiritually mature and emotionally mature to realize we don't have to all agree to all follow Jesus. All right, so my goal is that he can at least see why someone else, not him clearly, could and would vote for Trump, and also go to New Hope. So my line of questioning, I'm going through this. I'm like, okay, I got this information. All right, my question is this. All right, I'm curious. Do you think he's the only? And I'll grant you, he probably is a narcissist. Like, he's got some certainly narcissistic in him. Okay, I'm not even going to debate you on this. I'm not a Trump apologist trying to defend Trump. So, all right, I grant you. You know, I'm the kind of life he lives in. And I'm sure like that. I'm sure that at that level, there's some narcissism. Okay, I'm curious. Do you think that there are other politicians who are also narcissists? And then it's like, you already know where I'm going, right? And he goes, well, I mean, probably, sure. All right, how many? What percent here? What do you think? I'm just curious, like in politics. In politics, how many narcissists are there? It's 110%, right? It's all of them plus the future ones. It's like all of them, right? So then again, the goal isn't like, oh, Trump's a narcissist, like how dare he? So I'm sitting and he's going through, and I'm like, what about, I'm going through past presidents. All right, what do you think? Do you think Bill Clinton was a narcissist? He's like, well, he kind of did some things that were selfish and about him. Okay, now, again, we're not trying to judge people at random, but like, all right. And I'm curious, do you think you've ever voted for a narcissist? Oh, all of a sudden, this like, you can't vote for Trump because he's a narcissist, that crumbles, right? And again, my goal isn't to like destroy people, but just rather to say, hey, listen. Like the claim you make about someone or something, all right, listen, it probably is true of everyone you've ever voted for. And then he's like, well, what do you think? And I go, here's what I think. I think everyone you ever have voted for and everyone you will vote for has some narcissism in them. To get to that level to say, I want to be the president of the United States, takes something different inside of you. you're not a normal person just wanting to live your kind of a humble life. You're going like, I want to be in charge of the world. Like, that takes a certain kind of narcissism to say like, I want to be the president of the free world. All right, so anyone at that level of politics probably has some of this in them. So I'm gonna guess, this is true of anyone you vote for. I'm gonna guess you just don't like his brand of narcissism. And then he kind of laughed and we had this like chuckle. I'm like, so like, I totally get, narcissism or not narcissism or whatever. And then it became about like, well, I just don't like his policies. I'm like, oh, that's different. That's totally different, right? Now it's not personal, now it's not character. Now, and we ended with like, here's the cool thing. I'm glad none of us will be worshiping Trump or Biden or Harris. We get to worship Jesus. And you and I will be in heaven going, man, I'm so glad we don't have to vote anymore. Like, I'm tired of voting. And we had this chuckle and it was a great conversation and we kept having lunch and we moved on. Now, what could have been like, whoa, here we go. Simply by just asking questions and coming up with like, all right, there's probably some underlying assumptions or conclusions here. We were able to walk away going like, hey, I enjoyed that. That was kind of like, we threw in some jokes and it was like, that was funny. Later on, I remember, later on here in the lobby, I'm like, hey, who are you gonna vote for? And he's like, oh, come on, man. I'm like, I don't wanna know. I really don't wanna know. But it was this like, all right, there's who you vote, whatever. Now, there's not an issue that someone brings up or someone throws at you that you can't use questions and say, all right, we can engage in a conversation without being like, whoa, how could you? So the goal is to ask questions, to get information, and then say, all right, based on what you've, now, let me give you another example and then we'll keep going here. Not politics, because politics is whatever. It's a reality of life, but it's not the thing I want to talk about. Like, I want to talk about Jesus, and so I want to talk about how people who don't know Jesus, like how can we have conversations and engage in interaction with people who need Jesus? So I'm having food with another buddy of mine who I'm coaching with for baseball, and he's not a Christian at all. And we get into creation somehow. I thinking back, I don't even know how we got there. And he said, I can't. I go, so all right, so I don't know your faith. Is it okay? Is it okay if I ask questions? That was my first question. I already asked a question. I'm asking him permission to do what I just did without permission. Do you mind if I ask questions? He's like, yeah, man, I'd love that. How many of us would say, no, I don't want you to know what I think? You're flattered when someone says like, hey, can I ask you some questions? I want to know what you think about. You're like, oh, yeah, you should want to know what I think. Everyone should want to know what I think about the thing. And can I ask him, do you mind if I don't want to pry or, if it gets too crazy or personal, like, that's fine, just let me know. And he's like, man, you can ask anything. I'm like, oh, sweet. All right, I now have permission. He put on the table permission for me to ask any question I want. He gave me permission to do it. All right. So I said, so what is it about God or creation that is really hard for you to like understand? And he goes through, I can't understand if God is good, how there's so much evil in the world. All right, the big question, right? This is like, if there's 5 big dog questions that are coming, this is one of them, right? And that's right out the gate. And you're probably hearing that going like, okay, and that's why I don't go out to lunch with people. Like, don't ask me that. All right, so your natural response is this, to give him an answer. Well, let me give you the 3 reasons why. No, don't do that. Don't do that. What do? You ask questions, right? Okay, so when you say this, to help me out, because I've thought through this. This is a big issue, of course. It's not an easy one. But when you say evil, tell me, what do you mean by that? Right? All right. Well, evil, and he goes through this stuff, and he's like, I can't understand how God could be both like not evil and then allow evil. All right. Now, again, the temptation is to answer. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. You want them to answer. So my question was this. What do you think? What do you think a Christian would answer to that? what do you think they'd come up with? I'll share I know you want to know what I think, but I'm curious. What do you think a possible answer could be? And he's like, oh man, okay, well, I think, and you know what he does? He gives the most beautiful answer. And he goes, I think if that's me, I would say that God probably doesn't want robots and wants free choice. And with free choice means that evil is possible. And I'm like, you nailed it, bro. I'm like, are you sure you're not a Christian? You want to be one right now? I kind of joked. He's like, oh, and I go, no, honestly, like, that seems plausible, doesn't it? He goes, yes, I don't like it. I go, I understand not liking it, but it makes sense, right? And then it was, why is there so much evil? I could have just said I could have answered it for him. He answers it, and it's like, dude, you're like, you got it. You got it. You already know the answer to your question. You just wanted me to do it, and instead I asked you to do it, and it was like this, wow, hey, that's pretty good. We talked about hell and what it means. I'm like, well, what do you think? What do you think is the worst possible outcome how would you describe hell? Given your history and background? I'll tell you what I think, but I'm curious, what do you think? And he goes through, and I'm like, hey man, you and I aren't far off here. Like, that's my understanding of it. She's like, really? Like, dude, you're like, as much as you probably think we're at odds with what we believe, we're really close. You and I are really close. And I'm a pastor of a church. He's going like, I agree with a pastor. We're not far off here. Again, we're doing it. We're on a journey here together, and it's not this. It's like, hey man, we're right here. Like that. I absolutely. The goal is to use questions to get into a conversation and to allow them to discover things that then keep them up. We talked for an hour and a half. I'm like, hey man, I don't. If you want to keep going, we can. I don't want to overstay. And he's like, no man. But he goes, and we ended this. He goes, his girlfriend shows up, and he's like, all right, we got to go. And he goes, hey, we got to do this again. I really enjoyed our conversation. Like, yeah, because you did all the talking. Like, of course you enjoyed it, right? Like, yeah, awesome, totally. And like, all right, we'll keep it up. We'll keep going. So it's easy to get stuck, and even when you get stuck, you just ask a question. Okay, on your table are some cards. You see those cards? There's the little cards. Okay, partner up, or you can get even 3 of you, 2 of you, 3 of you. If you came with someone or are next to someone, if you're at a table where there's not enough to partner, like jump on another table, get a partner, find someone, and you're just gonna go pick any of the cards. There's front and back. Just pick a side, and you're gonna go through. There's 3 questions on each side. Just answer 3 of them. Pick a side, go through those 3. You don't have to go extensively. We're just practicing now, asking questions. Okay? Got it? Got it? Ready, set. I like that. Ready, set, go. We're only gonna do this for like 3 to 5 minutes, so not crazy. We're just getting in the habit of asking questions. So here's let me give you more direction. So if there's a group of you or 2 of you, one of you ask the question or say the thing, make the statement, and the other person is gonna respond. Okay? So you're gonna answer, you're gonna say the thing like you believe it. And then they respond. How do you respond? If you are doing the role playing, switch every question. So if one of you's making the statement, the other person's responding after you do that, switch, and then so you each get a turn.
You clothed my soul with everlasting brightness.
It's okay if this is hard. It's okay. It's supposed to be. Now remember, we want to assume you like this person, so you want to have a nice conversation. So make sure your questions are gentle. Okay, good. I know that was so quick, and in a real conversation, of course, it's gonna go longer. You're having coffee, you're at a neighbor's house, whatever it is, and so you're gonna have plenty of time. The goal isn't to have a full conversation right now, but rather to practice this idea of thinking through, like, what questions can I ask? Okay, how did you do? How'd you do? So, like, scale of 1 to 10. 1 is don't make me do that again. 10 is I could teach this. I'm so good. 5 is average. 5 is middle. 5 is like, I'm not great, but I'm not terrible. Okay, where are you at, right? 6, 4. I see a 2. I see a 3. These boys got a couple 10s. I don't know if I believe that. Okay, so here's what you should feel. Hey, that was not as easy as I thought it would be. And I felt what some of you felt was the tendency to ask one question and then lecture. And like, what do you mean by that? Well, here's what I mean. Well, here's why you're wrong. And you're like, you go from one question to like, I'm gonna go in. And you feel that pull to say like, I'm gonna speak now, instead of, well, let me just ask questions and just ask questions. And you should easily be thinking, how can I ask 5 questions before I actually jump in and make a statement or make a claim about something? How can I ask, can I get to 5 questions before I actually weigh in on what I think? Ask a question, let them talk. Ask a question, let them talk. Ask a question, let them talk. 3, okay. 4, another question. Okay, I got one. Okay, and by the time you've asked 5 questions, they've probably shared more in that moment than they've ever shared about this thing or their view with anyone else. So like, all right, and then now it's your turn to share, and you've just listened to them for 15 minutes. They're going to say like, hey, all right, I've been doing all talking. What do you believe about this thing? And now you've just earned the right to be heard. So you ask questions, right? We'll practice a little bit here more in a second, but here's how you can improve. Improve your question with your skills with 3 steps. First, anticipate objections and think of them in advance. There are a number of hot button issues that you know are gonna come up. So you think through, what can I ask in advance? You're having dinner, and you know so-and-so is gonna be there, and they're gonna talk about how the Bible is just it's just a fairy tale book. They bring it up every Thanksgiving. It's coming up again. All right, you already know it's coming up. Okay, it would do you great service to say, all right, what are some questions I can ask and be ready ahead of time? So when it comes, oh man, he has no idea. Usually I've got no bullets in my chamber. I'm loaded with some questions. I'm ready to go. Not that it's a fight, but like, all right, I'm ready to engage in a conversation. There are a number of issues that are just going to come up. The problem of evil is one of them. If you haven't thought through it, you got to spend some time thinking through, all right, what can I do about this? Like when this comes up, some things that I can ask, some like go-tos, right? Some go-to questions. So you anticipate them and then work on this issue or question that has stumped you in the past. I remember, this is one of my favorite like learning techniques for people. When I was a youth pastor, we did this thing where we every summer we'd have our kids go to this conference, and we'd do evangelism and apologetics training in the morning, and then send them out on the beaches and parks and stuff, and go 2 by 2 and go share their faith. And they would come back going, I got worked over. Like, I was trained, I thought I knew. And I remember one guy comes and he goes, there's an atheist booth. They have a booth set up, and they're like, atheists, for San Diego or whatever. And they're like, come talk to us. So he and his partner, a girl, went up, and they're like, all right, we got this. I'm like, dude, you're not ready. You're not ready. They've read the Bible more than you have, but go. And I'm so stoked that you went up. So he went up and like, hey guys, so we're Christians, we're just talking. You guys believe in the Bible? And they're like, oh yeah. And then she starts talking, and they go, hold on. You guys believe in the Bible, right? And they're like, yeah. All right, well, the Bible says that women aren't allowed to talk, so I'm only going to talk to him. So if you could just hold your tongue here, and you just felt that. You're like, whoa. I mean, this was like 20 years ago, so it's okay. But you're like, whoa, like this wasn't recent. This wasn't yesterday. And you're like, ooh, all right. And he goes, I was done after that. They cooked me. He's like, he say cooked, that's a new term. But he's like, I got worked. He goes, I didn't know what to do. They're quoting scripture I've never heard before. And I'm like, all right, man. He goes, what do I do? What do I say? When that happens, give me the answer. And I said, you get to go study. Sounds like you get to go study this issue. And what are you going to do next time this comes? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, here's some things to read. Here's some articles. All right, go look it up. And he's like, all right, I'm not letting that happen to me again. I'm coming ready, right? Sometimes our greatest teacher in life is when someone does stump us and we go, I don't know. And the proper response isn't, I guess I shouldn't be a Christian anymore. The proper response is, I don't know. I haven't thought through that issue. I'll tell you what, let me go research and think about this. Let me go read some more. I'm curious, you've got me thinking. And then I'll have an answer for you if you want to meet up or we can talk again. He couldn't do that, but you could, right? I've never thought about that, or that's interesting. Hold on. How about I go look it up and then we can continue this conversation. Would that be fine? Awesome. You bought yourself time. You don't have to, in the moment, come up with this is the answer. And you realize I was not ready for that issue he brought up. I didn't know that was coming. All right, next time I'll be ready. So you work on an issue or question that has stumped you in the past. You brainstorm straightforward response questions that will put you in the driver's seat. All right, now I'm ready. If that happens again, I have some questions that I'm ready. Remember, a question, Mark, is shaped like a fish hook. So use them as a hook. All right, use a question in the conversation as a tool. Okay, so anticipate what's going to happen. Now, reflect afterwards on questions you might have asked. This is another good strategy, a good tactic for you. After you have a conversation, all right, what are some things I could have asked in that moment? I do this every time I have a conversation with someone. I'm like, oh man, I should have asked that. And it's instead of beating myself up, it's like, all right, store that away. That's a good question. All right, if that comes up, hopefully I'll remember to do that again. So reflect on things you could have. After each conversation, take a few moments for self-assessment. Think about questions that you could have asked. Oh, man, I could have asked this. Next time, if this comes up, all right, I'll think about that. I'll be ready. Consider how you could have phrased questions more effectively or maneuvered differently. Again, I do this in areas where I'm like, oh, that was lousy, or I fumbled that one. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do that again. That didn't go well. Or there's times like, oh, that worked really well. That was a really great thing to bring up or a question to ask. When the pressure's off, all of a sudden, you become brilliant. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I could have thought of that. I could have thought of that. So when the pressure's off, give yourself time to think about all All right, some things you could have done differently. So practice new questions and responses. You could do it out loud or with someone else. We just did some. In a second here, we'll do some more. And it's like, all right, I've never really been asked this. No one's ever been brought, no one's ever said this to me. But now here I am having to practice this. This is kind of awkward. But also, all right, I feel ready now if this ever comes up. So practice prepares you for actual encounters. If you practice in advance, then when an issue comes up, you're ready. There are a number of issues that, like, if someone brings up with me, it's not like I've got it all figured out, but I'm like, all right, I've had this conversation enough. I know some questions to ask. I know some things that, like, all right, this is gonna be a good conversation, and I'm ready for it. Sometimes they'll use the question on you and try to trap you, and they'll ask you, right? This is great. If you get in a situation where they're like, well, hold on, don't ask me, what do you think? And, well, I asked you first. And you're like, okay, hold on, easy now. So what do you do if they're trying to trap you? Okay, there's a couple things you can do. First, stop the advance politely. Hey, hold on, before I answer, you can share something. But refuse to answer their questions and politely say, hey, you know what, I'd rather not answer right now. I want to know what you think. So I'll do this a lot. They'll go like, hold on, but seriously, what do you think? And I'll go, listen, I'm going to tell you what I think. I honestly, we're going to leave this conversation. You're going to know what I think. But before we do, I genuinely am curious what you think. I really do want to know, what do you believe about ... or whatever it is. Like, I'm so intrigued by hearing what other people say or what you think about this thing. I really want to know. I genuinely want to know. All right. Okay. All right, I'll tell you. And then two, you can gain control again by doing this. So if they ask questions, you could ask them to restate their point and then the reasons for it. All right, so hold on. Tell me clearly again so I don't misunderstand, and then your reasons, and then let me think about it. So hold on. I heard you just said, this will happen a lot. You'll be in a conversation and they'll go through like 7 different topics without even taking a breath. I mean, they just go. And with this and this is why Christians and this thing and this is why it's a fraud and this is why Jesus is made up and this is why, and you're just going like, okay, you just listed a whole bunch of stuff. Hold on now. Let's do this again. And tell me, let's do one at a time. All right, pick one thing. Tell me what you believe and why, and then let me think about it. All right, just slow it down. All right, give yourself time. You can do that. It's fine. It's totally fine. Again, don't fall for the professor's ploy where they're just going this and this and this, and then you just are overwhelmed. You're like, I don't even know where to start. All right, do you know where to start? It's the same way you eat an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. All right. They just threw out an elephant's worth of topics. All right, let's just do one. Let's just pick, all right, hold on. The first thing you said was this. Can we just talk about that? I'm curious about, all right, now, the rest you've kind of put on hold. Maybe you don't even have to deal with, but the one thing, right? Okay, so some common challenges are what are on your paper. Okay, now flip it over. You've got 3 new ones. Did you do all 6? Some of you did all 6? All right, great. Well, do them again. Okay, here we go. Partner up. You can use the same partner or switch partners, and flip the card over, and now you've got new questions. And if you already answer them, all right, then great. Just take turns re-answering the questions, but just switch the role, like switch who responds. Okay, so one person's going to make the claim, whatever the claim is, and then you're going to respond, ask a question. And then if you are making the claim, respond to their question, answer their question. Let them ask a second question. If you're the one asking questions, try to get to 3 questions. Try to ask 3 questions before you make a statement about anything, right? And if you're the person making the claim, just make something up. It can be, try and be realistic. Don't be like crazy, like, oh, well, the aliens and, well, but, okay, you got it? Ready? Go. Okay, a couple more minutes. Keep going. You got 2 minutes, and then we'll jump back in. Keep going.
On my shoulders, I will hold you here in the dead of night, dead of night, dead of night. You don't require my good intention. Your eyes see deeper than what I hide behind. Not just my victories. Oh, you take
Okay, how'd you do? How'd you do? Better than your first go around, hopefully? You went from a 3 to a 4, maybe? Where you're like, oh, I went up, or maybe I'm a 3.5, I went up a half a, okay. This is, you could see why this takes a little bit of like work and practice. You're not gonna be just naturally day one, I am great at asking questions and thinking through. We always want to tell people what we believe, what we think, and how and why we're right. It's harder to think through questions, but it is better. It is better. Even in the conversations you're having, like you ask a question, even though, and if you're the one answering, like the one making the claim, even though you know that this is just an exercise, they ask you a question, what do you think? You're like, I kind of want to share what I believe right now. Like, thanks for asking. Even though, and it's like, it's so easy to, when you're asked a question or when you ask a question, for the other person to go, all right, I'm going to engage. Here we go. I'm jumping in. Okay, you want to know what I believe? Here's what I think. And so practice asking questions. Now, here's the next tactic, and we'll go through this, and then we'll practice this one, and then we'll do some Q&A, and then you guys are going to be professionals at this. Okay, the suicide tactic are this: self-refuting claims that destruct on their own. That all you have to do is point out that they are self-contradictory. So the suicide tactic takes advantage of the tendency that many points of view simply self-destruct. You will be surprised at how many of these statements people make that if you just know how, like, where to point, that the statement falls apart. And statements that everyone use, that everyone says, and they just accept it as true. And they simply self-destruct. So their self-destructive views are commonly called self-refuting statements, that they refute themselves. These views defeat themselves all on their own. All you have to do is point it out. All you have to do is point it out, and then it's done. It's done. You walk away, and you're like, all right, well, that claim's done. Instead of defending it, all you do is pointing out that it is inconsistent and it is self-contradictory, that it self-destructs. That's all you have to do. Once you get the hang of this, these are honestly some of the easiest things to, like, oh, ooh, you recognize it, you almost get excited, like, ooh, got one. But then you have to be careful, right? You want to be gentle. It's not, the point isn't to, like, hey, here's why you're wrong, but instead, like, all right, let's talk about what you said. So statements that commit suicide have within them the seeds of their own destruction. Within the statement, they refute themselves. Here's an example. Ready? I cannot speak a word of English. Is spoken in English. Right? The very statement itself is untrue because it defeated itself. Do you see how this works, right? Here's another one. There are no sentences more than 5 words. These are silly examples, but that is a sentence with more than 5 words. All you have to do is just point it out. You can't know anything for sure. This is something people love to say. Hey, you can't know anything for sure. You know the question? It's such an easy question. Do you know that for sure? That's it. And it's done. There's nothing, like, it's over. Like that conversation, like, all right, that statement that you can't know anything for sure is no longer one that they can use, right? Do you know that for sure? Well, that's the only thing you can know for sure. How do you know that for sure? How do you know that that's the only thing that you can know for sure? And all of a sudden it's like, okay, fine, there are some things you can know for sure. Great, you just got them to admit that there are universal truth claims, at least one. All right, and so all you do is point out these things. Okay, so this tactic works because of the fundamental rule of logic, the law of non-contradiction. Law of non-contradiction says that two contradictory statements cannot be true at the same time. Two contradictory statements cannot be true at the same time. So we can say this: A, whatever A is, statement A or concept A, cannot be non-A at the same time in the same way. So we can't say that there is only one God and also there are millions of gods. Well, hold on, which is it? If there are millions of gods, then there can't be only one. And if there's only one God, there can't be millions of other gods, right? They can't both be true at the same time in the same way. Now, maybe you define gods differently, and so maybe by one you're saying angels. Okay, but if we're using the same language here, something can't both be and not be at the same time. So but people will say this all the time. We'll go through some examples here. You'll get good, hopefully, at being able to recognize these. All these views express or contain contradictions, all of them. They are usually obvious. So here's an obvious one: there are no absolutes. Is that always absolutely true? Yes, that is the only absolute, that there are no absolutes. Okay, that means that's not absolute. Your statement about there being not absolutes is not absolute, right? And you're like, okay, and at some point it just becomes circular and you're like doing this, but you point it out and you're like, all right, there are no absolutes. All right, are you absolutely sure about that? And then that's usually an easy response, and then they kind of laugh because they get it. Right away, they're like, okay, I see what you did there. Fine. There are at least some absolutes. A contradiction, there are no absolutes. This is, here's your blank. This is an absolute. Okay. Implicit contradictions are often hidden and sometimes require a little bit of reflection. Some of them are obvious. Sometimes it's like, all right, what is the underlying contradiction here? Here's an example. You can't trust what other people say. Yeah, all right. Here's the underlying, and that might be a true statement, but here's the implication. I can't trust what you say. I can't trust you then. If that's true, you can't trust what people say, which it is true. You can't trust you can't always trust what people say, but you can't trust what people say. All right, that means I can't trust what you say, right? And you're like, well, you can trust me, but not everyone else. Like, if true, how can I trust what you say? That's the implicit contradiction. Sometimes they're more subtle. So you shouldn't force your morality on me or anyone else. How many times have you heard this? Hey, listen, you shouldn't preach your views on someone else. You shouldn't tell someone else what they're supposed to believe. You're like, whoa, dang, okay, fine, I won't do it. No, don't do that. You ask a question and you respond, and you hear this and you go, I see what's going on here. Wait a minute. Are you pressing that view on me? Are you trying to convince me of your view? Now, again, you're not a jerk. You're not being like, gotcha. But gently, you shouldn't force your morality on me or anyone else. To which you respond, do you think, now, to a degree, I might agree with that. But do you think in saying that you're trying to force your understanding of morality onto me? Namely, that I shouldn't be able to force my morality on someone. Are you trying to convince me of your perspective? In which they'll go, well, yeah. but you shouldn't do that. You just told me you shouldn't do that, right? And they get, and you can see people, you can see them just go like, okay, you're right. To which you go, I usually am. No, don't say that. But you shouldn't force your morality on me. Okay, are you telling me it is wrong to say that other people are wrong? Is it wrong to say that other people are wrong? Again, when you start feeling these out and like, oh, okay, I get it. Okay, all right. I can understand. When someone says that, all right. Explicit contradictions are usually obvious. There are no absolutes, right? Okay, time to practice. Here we go. All right. You have on your paper there a bunch of them, right? A bunch of statements. Okay, all of them have built into them this contradiction. Okay, how would you respond? So take turns, again, in your group with your person. Each one, one person is going to say it, and then the other person is going to look for the contradiction in it, whether it be easy to find or subtle. And then here's how you respond. You're going to find it, you're going to catch it, and you're going to ask a question. You're not going to say, oh, well, the reason that doesn't work is because, no. Ask it, well, hold on. Do you mean, or if that's true, then that would mean, do you think that? Okay, you're going to ask a question. This is going to be maybe a little trickier, but it'll be fun. So take turns, every other one, going through it with your partner or your group of three, however you're paired up, and we'll practice now. Ready? Go.
This sweet surrender, not like I've known before. You know my failures, and still you call me yours. So I've learned to kiss the waves that throw me up against you, and that's where you're leading me to trust in your love. Here is my heart, all that I have. Take it and make it something beautiful. Here in your hands, like only you can. Take it and make it something beautiful. Oh yeah, your mercy's never gonna stop. Your grace will never give up. You're pouring diamonds from the dust. You're making us beautiful. Your mercy's never gonna stop. Your grace will never give up. You're pouring diamonds from the dust. You're making us beautiful. Here is my heart, all that I am. Take it and make it something beautiful. Here in your hands, like only you can. Take it and make it something beautiful. Here is my heart, all that I am. Take it and make it something beautiful. Here in your hands, like only you can.
Okay, so remember, the goal is not to find the contradiction. The goal is to ask a question and help them discover the contradiction. Remember, right? So you find it and you're like, oh, I got it. And then you tell them why they're wrong. No, don't do that. You're going to then ask a question to help them discover the contradiction. You see the challenge? You see why it's a little harder, but also way more fun. Okay, keep going.
Steady, singing in the rivers of your majesty, dancing to the rhythms of your melody. I see you everywhere that I go. Steady, singing in the rivers of your majesty, dancing
right, are you at least halfway, hopefully? Anyone done? Anyone be like, we got them, we nailed them? You got them? Okay, good. The kids are killing it. Still more time? You still got a few more? Okay, a couple more minutes.
Surrounds me, your presence is on me. I find strength knowing that your faithfulness endures. When darkness surrounds me, your presence is on me.
The message of the eighth psalm, Psalm number 8, which reads as follows. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is thy name in all the earth, who hast set thy glory.
Okay, how do we do? How do we do? 1 to 10. Little better. Are we at least 5s, or are you at least like, I think I'm getting the hang of this? So I'm gonna guess for some of these are probably hard, some of them are pretty easy, like, okay, I got it. The hard part is then, but how do I ask a question to help them discover it, right? So it's one thing to go like, okay, I know why that's wrong, but how do I help them discover it's wrong? Because it's one thing to tell them, it's another for someone to discover it and to answer it themselves and go like, oh, okay, I see why that's wrong. It's not, you told me why that's wrong, it's, oh, I understand why that's wrong. So let's, should we go through these? Should we do this together? We'll be like, all right, yeah, because these are some like common objections people bring up. All right, number 1, it's wrong to try to change other people's religious beliefs. Okay, you understand why this is self-refuting? All right, you're trying to change my belief, right? Okay, that statement is attempting to change my belief that it's wrong to, that you should not be allowed to try to change other people's beliefs. All right, so what were some questions you asked? You want me to just give you some good ones? Okay, all right. If that's true, aren't you trying to change my beliefs? Or you can say this, isn't that conversation is trying to convince someone else of something else, right? Aren't there things, would you say that there are things that you think I'm wrong on that I should probably change? Yeah, probably. All right. So would you then be guilty of breaking the same thing, trying to convince me I'm wrong of something? Okay, fine. Okay, all right. I think it's a number. Okay, all religions are equally true and valid. All of them are equally true. Ever heard this one? Right? This is a common one. Hey, all religions are equally true and valid. Okay, so why is this wrong? Okay, because there are religions that contradict other religions, right? So that's why we know it's wrong. They can't possibly all be right. They can't possibly all be right because they all believe so Like fundamentally such different things. But how, okay, but I gotta ask a question. I can say that, but they're not convinced. Okay, so a question. Would you say that's true of religions that are completely opposite of each other? What do you think about religions that contradict each other? How can they both be true and valid at the same time? They made the claim. They defend it. Remember, no free rides. It's not you answering why. It's, all right, you're saying all religions are equally true and valid? Okay, prove it. Prove it. All right. What about the religions that contradict each other? And they'll say, well, which religions? Because they won't know. That's the most they've ever thought about this. What do you mean? Well, what religions? All right. Buddhism doesn't believe in a personal God. It's a force. You're trying to become nirvana. You're trying to become one with the universe. In Judaism, they believe in one God. In Christianity, they believe in one God in three persons. In Hinduism, there's millions of gods. All right, how can they all be true at the same time? How can there both be not a God, one God, a trinity, and millions of gods? How could all of those be equally true at the same time? Tell me. And that's how quiet it gets. Because I don't know, right? It's a nice sentiment to say, but how can that be true? Okay, you keep going. You can only know what's been proven by science. What's the problem with that? If you don't get this, you're gonna kick yourself. You're gonna be like, oh, dang it. Okay, you can't prove that statement by science. You can't prove logic with science. All right. So you can only know what's been proven by science. To which your question, you respond with, okay, how would you prove that statement with science? Okay, fine. There's some things you can know without science. Like right away, their entire demeanor, entire argument changed. Okay, there is no ultimate truth. What's the problem with that? It's assuming that is ultimately true. That statement is ultimately true. Okay, would you say that statement is always true? There is no ultimate truth. Yes, that's always true. So would you say that might be an ultimate truth? Fine, there's one ultimate truth, and then the rest are all false. You're like, okay, you made the claim, now prove that to me. Okay, how can that be true? It's wrong to condemn anyone for anything. It's wrong to condemn someone for what they believe, just because it's different than yours. All right? Is there anything that you would say that I'm wrong in? To condemn anyone for anything, is there anything anyone can do that you think should be punished or should be, that there should be some amount of justice? Of course, right? All right. It's wrong to judge anyone for anything. All right. Do you think you've ever judged someone? And have you ever done it correctly? Have you ever rightly, justly judged someone? We have people who, I'll say this a lot. They're like, oh, it's wrong to judge people. I'm like, okay, well, we have a profession in this world called judges. And you know what their job is? To judge the people in front of them. Like that's what and no one will say that's wrong. In fact, we want them to get it right. We want you got to go through special training to make sure you judge justly. All right. Everyone's view is a product of his own prejudices. Sometimes they'll say this, you're only a Christian because you were born in America. If you were born in India, you'd be Hindu. If you were born in China, you'd probably be Buddhist. If you were born in the Middle East, you'd be Muslim. What do you say? What do you do? You're like, it's probably true. Here's the problem. Let's go through this. Here's the problem with that one. The person who made that statement is making a statement based on their own prejudices. They're a product of their own prejudices. This is a true statement, but it doesn't mean you're wrong. You could say the same thing. The reason you, whoever it is, atheist, agnostic, critic, you only believe that because you were born in America. If you were in the Middle East, you'd be Muslim. You'd be Muslim. You're only atheist because you live here. That's true for everyone. That doesn't mean that anyone is right or wrong. You have to look then at the truth claims. All right, so everyone's view is a product of their own prejudices, and to which you say, yeah, I would imagine that you have views that are products of your own prejudices. Would you say that those views are right or wrong? Are your views based on prejudices always right? Or are they also wrong? God doesn't take sides. God doesn't, did you know that? He doesn't take sides. And if he did, he'd be on my side. Like, that's the statement, right? God doesn't take sides. All right. Here's a possible response. How do you know? How do you know he doesn't take sides? Don't you think he would take sides in certain situations, right? Do you think that if Hitler was standing before God, that God would take a side? Do you think he would say, you know what, hey, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge? Or would he say, hey, no, there are things that actually are wrong? Okay, God does take sides. The hard part then is, all right, how do we know whose side? How do we know which side is his side, right? The Bible could not have been inspired by God because men wrote it and men make mistakes. Part of that's true. Men write things and they write mistakes. Yeah. How would you respond? How do you respond to this? Okay. Oh, that's really good, right? These are not easy. You're like, oh, right. Okay, so what's the problem with this, all right? That means there's not a single book or resource that we could ever count as trustworthy. We could never read a history book. We could never read a biology book. We could never read a dictionary and have any source of confidence. Now, is it true that men make mistakes? Sure. But does it mean that there's a mistake in every single thing ever written? Well, no, that's crazy. We also get it right. So when we say the Bible couldn't be inspired by God because men wrote it and men make mistakes, yes. If the reason we say that this is inspired by God and we believe it is because it wasn't only men writing it. That God is actually at work. So then the question is, well, is there anything that you've read that you believe that a man wrote? Well, yeah, sure. How can you trust that? Right? So the statement that because men wrote it, you can't possibly believe it would mean there's not a document in it that has ever existed that we can ever believe true. All right. God can't exist because there's so much evil in the world. What's the problem with this one?
How do you know anything is evil?
Okay, if you take God out of the equation, how do you get to call something evil? What is evil if there is no God? How can natural selection ever lead to something being evil if we don't have some sort of moral absolute in place? Does that make sense? Right? So if we take God out, how would you explain evil? What is evil then? And this is a hard question for like an atheist or agnostic to answer, and they'll go in all kinds of circles. This one, like the problem of evil is a hard answer for us. It's a hard thing to think through, but it's even harder for the atheist, for the person who says there is no God. All right, then that means there can't be evil, or evil is just it's just a word we've used to create for things that we don't like. We've manufactured what evil, and how do we even define what evil is? So if there is no God, how can there be evil? Okay, God used Darwinian evolution to design the world. What's your first question? What do you mean by, when you say Darwinian evolution, tell me how you understand that, right? You just bought yourself about 5 minutes of like, whew, I don't know what I'm supposed to say next. You're like, I got myself some time. What do you mean by Darwinian evolution? Okay, how did you come to that conclusion? All right, I got myself 5 more minutes to think through and like, all right, let him go. Okay, right out the gate, the question is, how do you know he did that? And by default, Darwinian evolution is not a guided process. It's just by chance. So design and Darwinian evolution don't work together. So how is it that God is using an unguided process to guide the world? Oh, that's a good question. Fine, I don't know, right? Like, okay, the point, we'll wrap up here. The point is not to make statements, but instead to think through questions and ask questions, not like gotcha questions, but rather, I want you to think about this, or if you make a claim, you defend it. Okay, at the end here are some good ways to disagree with someone. When you have something that you disagree with, here's what you don't do. You don't say, you're wrong, and I'm right, and here's why. You don't even say, I disagree. Because do you know why? Do you know why? Because who cares? That doesn't even mean you're right. I'm sure, so let's just get real here. There are things that probably even on a Sunday that I say that you guys like, I disagree with that. Okay, and that may be true, right? There are things that people would disagree with you. They'll say, oh, I disagree with you because X, Y, Z, and you're going like, okay, I don't care. I disagree doesn't hold any weight or authority, and it doesn't get them to think through why they might be wrong. Because who are you? You disagree, so what? So what? Prove to me, like show me. Okay, so instead of saying I disagree, all right, I do this a lot. All right, hey, I hear what you're saying, and there's a lot of people who would agree with you. Let me present a different alternative, and then tell me what you think. Do you see how that's far more engaging than like, I disagree? Let me tell you where I land, and then you tell me what you think about it. Okay. I wouldn't characterize it that way. Here's what I think. This might be a more accurate way to look at it. All right. I just said, hey, I disagree. Let me give you a different option. All right. Have you thought about or considered another alternative? What about this? I don't know if that's going to work, and here's why. Here's why that might not be true. Here's another one. I'm not sure I agree with you with the way you put it, but maybe think about this. I'll do this a lot. Someone will say something, and I'll go, I don't know if I would say it with those words. I see what you're getting at. I think I would probably describe it like this, and then they'll usually go, oh yeah, that makes more sense. Like, awesome, okay. So the goal is to use questions more than you think you should, and to engage in conversation with the goal that, again, you're leading them not to like pray to receive Jesus right now, but rather to keep them up at night, to get them thinking, and then to keep the conversation going. Okay, we went a little long, so let me pray for us, and then if you have questions, I'll be here as long as we need to. You can come up and we can chat. And if you have kids, make sure you go get them, and then we'll see you on Sunday. Men, we'll see you Saturday for bacon. All right, Lord, thank you for tonight. Thank you that we can engage in conversation. Thank you that that you've given us a mind, and you've given us the ability to engage in conversation and to use our intellect. And so will you help us when we do engage in conversations, to not be combative, but instead to have conversations with the goal that we can get people to, the ultimate goal is that they come to know you, but our immediate goal is that they take one step closer to you, that they're one step closer to you after our conversation than before it. So help us, even this week, to realize and to recognize in our conversations how we can interact with people and do the hard work for your glory and your kingdom. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. We'll see you Saturday, gentlemen, and then everyone else. Sunday, we're back at it. And then next month, we will, next First Wednesday will be great. I think tables and chairs, leave them as they are, Andy? Leave it as is. Awesome. Great. Have a great night. If you want to chat, I'll be around. Other than that, thanks, and we'll see you this weekend.